I'm Joshua. I'm 33 years old, and my entire family just staged an intervention in my woodshop, not to check on me, but to demand I sign away my life's work to bail out their golden boy from total ruin. Before I tell you about the moment their faces turned ghostly white, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. The air in my workshop usually smells like cedar and sawdust, peaceful, honest smells. But today it was thick with the stench of desperation. And it wasn't mine. It was rolling off my family in waves. My father, Robert, stood in the center of the room. He was wearing an Italian suit that probably cost more than my first truck, looking completely out of place against my lathes and industrial saws. His face, which usually wore a mask of disappointment whenever he looked at me, was etched with a raw, ugly panic. Then there was my brother, Nathan, the financial genius, the guy who once told me that working with my hands was for people too slow to use their brains. He was slumped in a chair I had built myself, staring at the floor like it held the secret to his disappearing bank account. His wife, Vanessa, stood behind him. She was the city goddess he'd bragged about for years. Even now, in the middle of a financial meltdown, she was clutching a designer handbag like a shield, her perfectly manicured nails tapping a frantic rhythm against the leather. My mother, Martha, stood by my father's side. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, darting between me and my father like she was waiting for a signal. And then there was Lydia, my wife. She was standing near the large workbench that's the heart of my studio. She was wearing her gardening overalls, her hair pulled back in a simple braid. To them, she was just the country girl who didn't understand the complex world of high finance. My father didn't waste time with small talk. He slid a thick manila folder onto my workbench. The sound of it hitting the wood cut through the silence like a gunshot. "Joshua, we don't have much time," he said, his voice straining to stay authoritative. "Nathan's situation is dire. He's facing more than just bankruptcy. There are legal implications, debts that go beyond the bank. He made a mistake, a massive one, but he's your brother. Family is everything, Joshua. You have a duty." I looked at the folder. I didn't even have to open it to know what was inside. "A duty, Dad? I've been running this workshop for 10 years. I've put every cent I've earned back into this land and these tools. And now you want me to sell it? Sell the land Grandma left to me, just to pay off Nathan's gambling debts on the stock market." "It wasn't gambling," Nathan snapped, finally looking up. His eyes were bloodshot. "It was a calculated risk that went sideways because of a market manipulation I couldn't have foreseen. I was building an empire, Joshua. You wouldn't understand. You're content making chairs and tables for a living." "And yet," I said, leaning against my workbench, "it's my chairs and tables that have a roof over our heads, while your empire is currently being repossessed by the bank. I saw the news, Nathan. Your firm is under investigation. Your salary was frozen weeks ago. Why are you really here?" Vanessa stepped forward, her voice sharp and condescending. "We're here because we're family, and family takes care of its own. This land is worth a fortune now because of the tech corridor expansion. If you sell the workshop and the acreage, we can clear Nathan's most urgent debts and settle the lawyer fees. It's a small sacrifice for the family name." "A small sacrifice?" I felt a laugh bubbling up in my chest, but it wasn't out of humor. It was pure bitterness. "This is my life. Lydia and I have built this from nothing. Where were you when I needed a loan to buy my first CNC machine? Oh, that's right. You were at the country club laughing about my woodworking hobby. You told me I had no ambition because I didn't want to move to the city and shout at a computer screen all day." My mother stepped toward me, her hand reaching out but stopping short of touching my sawdust-covered sleeve. "Joshua, honey, please. Nathan could go to jail. Think of your father's heart. Think of our reputation. We can't let this come out. If you just sign the papers, we can make this all go away. We can get Nathan back on his feet." I looked at Lydia. She hadn't said a word. She just stood there, watching them with a calm, unreadable expression. My family always treated her like she was invisible, or at best, a local curiosity. They talked over her, ignored her opinions, and made polite jokes about her upbringing. Nathan once asked her, right to her face at a Thanksgiving dinner, if she found it difficult to use a smartphone after growing up on a farm. "I'm not signing anything," I said firmly. My father's face turned a deep, dangerous shade of purple. He slammed his hand onto the workbench. "You listen to me. I raised you to be a man of character, not a selfish brat. Your brother is in trouble. This isn't a request. I am telling you as your father that you will do this. This land belongs to the family name, and the family name needs it now. The land belongs to me, Dad." Grandma was very specific in her will. She knew exactly what Nathan would do if he got his hands on it. She saw the greed in him even then. Nathan jumped up, his chair clattering back. "You've always been jealous. Jealous that I was the one who made it. Jealous that I was the one they were proud of. You're just a bitter, small-town loser who found a wife as boring and plain as he is." Lydia finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it had a weight to it that silenced the room. "Nathan, I think you should sit down. Your blood pressure looks a little high, and we wouldn't want you to have a medical emergency on top of your financial one." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Stay out of this, Lydia. This is a family matter. Go back to your garden or whatever it is you do to pass the time." Lydia smiled. It wasn't a mean smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that was about to change everything. "Oh, I do a lot more than garden, Vanessa. But we'll get to that. Joshua, are you sure you don't want to help them?" "I'm sure," I said, looking her in the eye. "I'm done being the family's safety net while they treat me like the dirt under their boots." My father pointed a finger at me. "Then you are no son of mine. If you let your brother fall, don't you ever call this house again. Don't you dare show up at my funeral expecting a dime of inheritance. You're dead to us." The room went cold. My mother started sobbing. Nathan looked triumphant for a second, thinking the threat would break me. But it didn't. Felt like a weight had been lifted. But then, Lydia stepped forward, and the real show started. To understand why I was so ready to let them walk out that door, you have to understand the last 5 years. It wasn't just one moment of tension. It was 1,000 cuts. It was 5 years of being the other son. It started at our wedding. Lydia and I didn't want a grand ballroom or a $1,000 plate. We got married right here on this property, under the ancient oak tree that marks the edge of the woods. It was beautiful. Local wildflowers, a barbecue pit, and all our friends from the county. My family arrived like they were attending a tragedy. Nathan and Vanessa showed up 30 minutes late in a rented Ferrari, making sure the engine roared loud enough to drown out the acoustic guitar. When Nathan stood up to give his toast, it wasn't about love or partnership. It was a stand-up comedy routine at our expense. "I have to hand it to my brother," Nathan had said, smirking at the crowd. "Most people use their college fund to get an MBA or start a hedge fund. Joshua used his to buy a pile of lumber and move into a shack. And look at this wedding. So earthy. I guess some of us are destined to build empires, and others are destined to build birdhouses. To Joshua and his country bride, may your life be as simple as your zip code." I remember the heat rising in my neck. I looked at my parents. They were laughing. My mother was nodding as if Nathan had said something incredibly profound. Lydia just sat there, her hand in mine, squeezing gently. Later that night, as the fireflies came out, I apologized to her. I told her I was sorry my family was so toxic. She looked at me with those deep, steady eyes and said, "Joshua, don't you ever apologize for them. Their words only have power if you believe them. They think they're looking down on us, but they're just trapped in a cage of their own making. What we have is real. It's solid. It's oak. They're just particle board with a fancy veneer. But the disdain didn't stop there. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, it was the same story. Nathan would spend the entire dinner talking about his promotion, his latest bonus, or the new Porsche he'd just leased. He'd ask me how the little shop was doing, always using that tone, the one you use with a child who's proud of a crayon drawing. Are you still making those? What do you call them? Adirondack chairs? He'd ask, swirling a glass of expensive wine. I told my interior designer about you. She laughed. She said high-end clients want Italian leather, not rustic wood. But hey, if it keeps you busy, right? My father would chime in. Nathan is right, Josh. You have a talent, but you lack vision. You could have been an architect, a developer. Instead, you're covered in dust every day. It's a waste. Look at your brother. He's a player. He's in the room where it happens. The worst was 3 years ago, at a party Nathan threw at their summer home in the Hamptons. He'd invited us mostly so he could show off. I'd spent weeks crafting a custom cherry wood coffee table as a housewarming gift. I'd hand-carved the joinery, sanded it until it felt like silk, and polished it with natural oils. It was, in my opinion, the best piece I'd ever made. When we arrived and presented it to them, Vanessa didn't even touch it. She looked at it like it was a pile of trash I'd dragged in from the street. Oh, how quaint, she said, not even looking me in the eye. We'll find a place for it. Maybe in the basement or the laundry room. It doesn't really fit our aesthetic. 10 minutes later, I walked past the kitchen and heard her whispering to one of her friends. Can you believe he brought that? It looks like something from a craft fair. I told the caterers to move it out by the trash cans in the back. I don't want the decorators to see it. I stood there, my heart sinking. I wanted to grab Lydia and leave right then. But Lydia was already there. She'd heard it too. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just walked up to Vanessa, smiled that calm smile and said, "You're right, Vanessa. It doesn't fit this house. This house is full of things that look expensive but have no soul. That table is far too good for this room." That was the last time we attended one of their parties. We were officially the outcasts. My parents stopped calling except to brag about Nathan's latest win. They didn't visit the workshop. They didn't ask about our lives. They were too busy basking in the reflected glow of Nathan's supposed success. So, standing there in the workshop now, listening to my father disown me because I wouldn't sell my soul to fix Nathan's greed, it wasn't a shock. It was just the final piece of the puzzle fitting into place. They had never seen me. They had never respected me. They only saw me as a resource to be tapped when the golden boy ran out of gold. The golden boy didn't just stumble. He fell off a cliff. About a month before they showed up at my shop, the rumors started. I don't follow the stock market, but you can't miss it when a major firm is being liquidated. Emily, our younger sister, the only one who actually treats me like a human being, called me late one night. "Josh, it's bad," she whispered. "Nathan didn't just lose money. He gambled with client funds. He was using a high-leverage strategy to short an emerging tech company. He was so sure they were going to fail. He bet everything. His house, his savings, even Mom and Dad's retirement fund." I felt a cold chill. Mom and Dad's money? How did he get his hands on that? "He convinced them he could double it in a month," Emily said, her voice shaking. "He told them he had inside info that this company, Biotimber, was a fraud. He told them they'd be millionaires and could finally stop worrying about their salary and just live off the interest. They gave him everything, Josh. Every cent." But the market didn't go Nathan's way. Biotimber didn't fail. They announced a breakthrough in sustainable construction materials, a type of engineered wood that was stronger than steel and carbon negative. Their stock didn't just rise. It skyrocketed. Nathan was caught in a short squeeze. The more the stock went up, the more money he owed. He was liquidated in 48 hours. The bank took his house. They took the Porsche. They took Vanessa's jewelry. But that wasn't the worst part. Because he'd used client funds in a way that violated several federal regulations, he was facing a criminal investigation. He needed millions to settle the civil suits and hire a top-tier lawyer just to stay out of a federal prison. That's when they remembered the simple brother. They remembered the 100 acres of prime land Grandma had left me. They remembered that the tech corridor was moving right toward my property line. To them, my workshop wasn't a business. It was an insurance policy they were finally ready to cash in. A few days after Emily's call, my parents tried to soften me up. They sent me an invitation to Sunday brunch. Not at a restaurant, but at their house or what was left of it. The tension was so thick you could sand it down. "Joshua," my father said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle as he passed me the bacon. "We've been thinking. We haven't spent enough time together. And your workshop, it's growing, isn't it? You must be feeling the pressure of the taxes on all that land. It's a lot for one man to handle." I didn't bite. "I'm doing just fine, Dad. Taxes are paid. Business is booming. I've actually been thinking about expanding the studio." His smile faltered. "Expanding? Well, that takes capital. And the market is very volatile right now. Just look at Nathan. Even the best can have a bad run. He's going through a bit of a rough patch. A minor liquidity issue." "A minor liquidity issue?" I put my fork down. "Dad, he's bankrupt. He lost your house. Why are we pretending?" My mother burst into tears. "It's not his fault, Joshua. He was targeted by those corporate vultures. He's a good boy. He just wanted to help us. And now he needs you. We all need you." Then they laid it out. They had already spoken to a developer. A guy who wanted to turn my property into a luxury condo complex. He'd offered a price that would cover all of Nathan's debts, settle the lawsuits, and even buy my parents a new house. All I had to do was sign the deed over. "And what about me?" I asked. "Where do I work? Where do Lydia and I live?" "Oh, don't be dramatic," Vanessa said, sipping her mimosa. "With the leftover money, you could buy a nice little house in the next county over. You could start a small hobby shop there. It's for the family, Joshua. Surely you can see the bigger picture." That was the moment I realized they didn't just want my land. They wanted to erase me. They wanted to tuck me away in some next county over, where I wouldn't be an embarrassment to their high society dreams. They wanted to destroy my life to preserve the illusion of Nathan's. I stood up. "The answer is no. It will always be no. If Nathan wants to stay out of jail, he should have thought about that before he stole from his clients and his parents. Don't call me again for this." I walked out, but as I reached my truck, I saw Nathan standing there. He didn't look like the golden boy anymore. He looked like a cornered rat. "You're going to regret this, Josh," he hissed. "You think you're so much better than me? You're nothing. You're a fluke. Grandma only gave you that land because she felt sorry for you. She knew you'd never make anything of yourself on your own. But I'm going to get that land. One way or another." I just started the engine and drove away. I didn't know then that the one way or another involved them showing up at my shop with a legal team and a mountain of lies. But I also didn't know that Lydia had been making some moves of her own. When I got home that day, I was shaking with rage. I told Lydia everything. I told her I was ready to walk away from them forever. I told her I felt guilty about my parents' retirement, but I couldn't sacrifice our future for Nathan's crimes. Lydia listened like she always does. She let me vent until the fire in my chest died down to a simmer. Then she sat me down at our kitchen table and opened her laptop. "Joshua," she said softly, "there's something I haven't been entirely honest with you about. Not because I wanted to keep secrets, but because I wanted us to have a life that was based on who we are, not what we have." I was confused. "What are you talking about, LYD? You know I grew up on a farm," she started. "And you know I went to school for bioengineering. But what you don't know is what happened to the research I started in college. I developed a process for stabilizing plant fibers into a structural composite. It was a project I loved, but I didn't think it would go anywhere. She clicked a few keys and showed me a website. My jaw dropped. It was the homepage for Biotimber, the very company Nathan had tried to destroy, the company that had just revolutionized the construction industry. Wait, LYD, you work for them? No, Joshua, she said, looking me straight in the eye. I founded them. I'm the majority shareholder. When we met, I was just starting the pilot program. I used the back 40 acres of your property, with your permission, remember, to test the growth cycles of the modified hemp and flax fibers we use. That garden my family mocks? It's a high-tech agricultural testing site. Couldn't breathe. You're the CEO of Biotimber? I'm the chief scientific officer. I hired a CEO to handle the empire-building part so I could stay here with you and do the work I love. I didn't tell your family because, well, look at how they treat people. I wanted to see if they'd ever see me. And I wanted to see if they'd ever respect you without knowing you were married to a millionaire. I sat back, stunned. The irony was almost too much to handle. Nathan had lost everything betting against his own sister-in-law. He tried to destroy the very company that was being run from the shack he so despised. LYD, why are you telling me this now? Because Nathan's firm didn't just short the stock, she said, her expression turning serious. They tried to launch a smear campaign. They tried to steal our intellectual property to prove we were a fraud. They were the ones who were being fraudulent. And the legal team Nathan is using? They're the same ones who tried to bully our small suppliers. She leaned in. They're coming for this land, Josh. Not just to pay his debts, but because they've realized that the soil here holds the secret to our composite formula. They think they can seize the property through some old family trust loophole they've cooked up, or just pressure you into signing. They don't know that I've already moved the land title into a protected corporate trust under Biotimber. So, I don't even own the land anymore. I asked, a bit hurt. No, Joshua. We own it. You're a board member. I made you one 2 years ago. I put the papers in with your business filings. You signed them, honey. You just thought they were part of the new insurance policy for the workshop. I laughed then, a real deep laugh. So when they come here to demand I sell the land, they're demanding you sell something you don't have the individual power to sell, Lydia finished. And they're demanding it from the woman they've spent 5 years calling a simple country girl. I think it's time we give them the meeting they've been asking for. We spent the next 48 hours preparing. We called our own lawyer, a man named Anthony who had been Lydia's corporate counsel for years. We also reached out to Julian, the CEO of Lydia's company. We set the stage. We knew they were coming. My father had sent a final, threatening text saying they would be at the shop at 10 a.m. on Monday with the necessary documents. I felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement. For years, I'd been the underdog. I'd been the one who lacked vision. But as I looked at Lydia, standing in our kitchen in her worn-out flannel shirt, I realized that she was the most visionary person I'd ever met. She hadn't built an empire of glass and greed. She'd built one of earth and innovation. And she'd done it while being mocked by the very people who now needed her mercy. Monday morning arrived. The air was crisp. I opened the shop doors and waited. I could hear the roar of their engines before I saw them. The high society was coming to the country, and they had no idea they were walking into a trap of their own making. This is the part you've been waiting for. The moment the veneer cracked and the particle board family finally saw what they were up against. They arrived in a 3-car caravan. My father's luxury sedan, Nathan's rented SUV, and a 3rd car carrying their lawyer. They stepped out like they were a royal delegation visiting a peasant village. Nathan was wearing a suit that was clearly meant to project success, but it was hanging off him. The stress had made him thin and gaunt. Vanessa looked like she was heading to a funeral, all black lace and oversized sunglasses. They marched into my workshop, My father didn't even say hello. He just slapped a new set of papers onto my workbench. "This is it, Joshua," he said, his voice cold. "We've had our lawyer look at Grandma's will. There's a clause about the land being used for the betterment of the family legacy. We can argue in court that your refusal to sell during a family crisis violates the spirit of that will. But we don't want to go to court. We want you to sign this voluntary quitclaim deed. Now." I didn't even look at the papers. I looked at Nathan. "Is this what you want, Nathan? You want to sue your own brother for land you didn't earn?" Nathan stepped forward, his face twisting with rage. "I earned everything. I worked 80-hour weeks while you were playing with saws. I deserve to be saved. You're just a hoarder sitting on a gold mine you don't know how to use. Sign the paper, Josh, or we will take everything you have. We'll make sure you never work in this town again." My mother was sobbing in the background. "Just do it, Joshua. For the family. For Nathan." Lydia stepped out from behind a stack of seasoned oak. She wasn't in her overalls today. She was wearing a simple, tailored navy suit. She looked elegant, powerful, and completely different. Vanessa actually gasped when she saw her. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Lydia said. Her voice was calm, but it filled the room. My father scoffed. "Lydia, I told you to stay out of this. You don't understand the legalities here." "Oh, I think I understand them better than anyone in this room, Robert," Lydia said. She gestured to the door. Our lawyer, Anthony, walked in, followed by Julian Croft, the CEO of Biotimber. Nathan's face went from pale to ghostly white in a split second. He recognized Julian. Everyone in the financial world knew Julian Croft. He was the man currently presiding over the company that had just bankrupted Nathan. "Julian," Nathan stammered. What are you doing here? This is a private family matter." Julian didn't even look at Nathan. He turned to Lydia. "The documents are ready, Dr. Thorne. We've finalized the expansion contract for the research facility on this site." "Dr. Thorne?" My father and mother looked at Lydia like she had suddenly grown a second head. "Wait," Vanessa said, her voice trembling. "Who are you?" Lydia walked over to my workbench and picked up the manila folder my father had dropped. She tossed it into the scrap wood bin without looking at it. "My name is Lydia Thorne. I'm the founder and chief scientific officer of Biotimber Innovations. And this land? It doesn't belong to Joshua. It hasn't for 2 years." The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a wood shaving hit the floor. You're that Lydia Thorne?" Nathan whispered. He looked like he was about to vomit. "The one who developed the composite? The one I tried to. The one you tried to short?" Lydia finished for him. "The one you called a fraud in your internal memos to your investors?" "Yes, Nathan. I saw those. We're currently in the process of filing a defamation suit against your former firm. And since you were the lead analyst on that research, your name is at the top of the subpoena list." My father grabbed the edge of the workbench to steady himself. "Lydia, how is this possible? You're a farm girl. You make jam." "I make many things, Robert," Lydia said. "One of them is a sustainable future for the construction industry. Another is a very successful business that, as of this morning, has purchased the outstanding debt on your home and Nathan's remaining liabilities." Nathan's eyes went wide. You bought my debt? Why?" "Not to save you," Lydia said, her voice turning to ice, "but to control you. You see, the bank was going to sell those notes to a collection agency that would have stripped you of everything, including your freedom. I bought them so I could decide exactly how this ends." She turned to my parents. "And as for your retirement fund?" Nathan didn't just lose it. He diverted it into an offshore account to try and cover his personal margin calls before the crash. "He stole from you, Robert. Martha. He lied to your faces while he was demanding Joshua's land." My mother let out a strangled cry. My father turned to Nathan. his face a mask of horror. "Nathan? Is this true? Did you take our money?" Nathan couldn't speak. He just slumped against the wall, his golden boy image shattering into a million pieces. "Now," Lydia said, stepping toward them, "here is how this is going to go. Joshua and I are going to continue our work here. This land is now a protected research site. Your voluntary quitclaim is worthless because the land is already owned by a corporate trust." She looked at Nathan. "You are going to cooperate fully with the federal investigation. You are going to sign a full confession regarding the theft of your parents' funds. If you do that, Biotimber will not press charges for the industrial espionage and defamation. We will allow you to enter a plea deal that keeps you out of prison, provided you work off every cent you owe your parents through a court-mandated repayment plan." She turned to Vanessa. "And you, I suggest you find a job, because the city goddess lifestyle is over. We've already started the repossession process on the Hamptons property." Vanessa looked like she wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She just turned and ran out of the shop. Lydia then looked at my parents. "Robert, Martha, you have spent 5 years mocking the son who actually cared about you and the woman he chose to love. You treated Joshua like an embarrassment because he didn't fit your idea of success. Well, look around. This hobby shop is the heart of a $50 million enterprise. And it's the only thing standing between you and homelessness." My father looked at me. For the first time in my life, there was no disappointment in his eyes. There was only shame. "Joshua, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I know you are, Dad," I said, and for the first time my voice didn't shake. "But you're not sorry because you were wrong. You're sorry because you got caught. You're sorry because the simple son is the only one with the power." I gestured to the door. "Now, please leave. Anthony will be in touch with the legal details. Don't come back here. Not for a long time." They left, not with a roar, but with a whimper. Nathan was practically being carried by my father. As their cars pulled away, the workshop was silent again. The smell of cedar and oak returned. The weeks following that day were a blur of legal meetings and media frenzies. Lydia's company was the talk of the industry, and the story of Nathan's fall became a cautionary tale in the financial news. Nathan didn't fight back. He couldn't. Lydia had him pinned. He signed the confession, admitted to diverting our parents' funds, and took a plea deal that stripped him of his licenses and put him on 5 years of strict probation. He's currently working as a junior clerk for a small insurance firm, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and 80% of his salary goes directly into a trust for our parents' retirement. Vanessa left him within a week of the confrontation. She tried to sue for a divorce settlement, but since there was no money left and Lydia's legal team had already placed liens on all their joint assets, she walked away with nothing but her clothes and a few designer bags that the bank decided weren't worth the effort to seize. My parents, that's the hardest part. They lost their house. They had to move into a small rental in a nearby town. I pay their rent through the Biotimber corporate account. I don't talk to them often. My mother calls and leaves crying voicemails, apologizing over and over. My father sends letters, mostly talking about how he started a small garden and how he finally understands the value of working with the earth. I want to forgive them. I really do. But every time I pick up a piece of cherry wood, I remember that table they let Vanessa throw by the trash cans. I remember the toast Nathan gave at our wedding while they laughed. Some things can be repaired, but some wood is just too rotten to save. You have to cut it out and start fresh. But there was one bright spot. Emily, our younger sister, came to the shop about a month after the big reveal. She didn't want money. She didn't want a job. She just wanted to give us a hug. "I knew you guys were special," she said, sitting on the workbench where so much drama had unfolded. "I didn't know you were millionaire tech giant special, but I knew you were better than them. I'm so glad you stood up to them, Josh." Lydia smiled and offered Emily a position as our head of community relations. Emily has a heart for people, and she's been brilliant at helping us navigate the local impact of the company's expansion. For the first time, a part of my family is actually part of my life. As for me and Lydia, not much has changed, and yet everything has. The workshop is bigger now. We have a team of master carpenters and bioengineers working side by side. We're building the first living home prototypes. Houses built entirely from Lydia's carbon-negative composites and my custom-designed timber frames. But at the end of the day, when the saws are silent and the sun is dipping below the line of oak trees, we're still just Joshua and Lydia. I still have sawdust in my hair, and she still has dirt under her fingernails from her garden. I've realized that my brother was right about one thing. I didn't want to build an empire. I wanted to build a life. But what he didn't understand is that when you build a life with integrity, with passion, and with the right person by your side, the empire tends to build itself. The country girl didn't just have the keys to our survival. She had the keys to a future none of them could even imagine. They were looking for gold in the stock market, while we were growing it in the soil and carving it out of the wood. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been a long journey from being the disappointment to being the one who stood his ground. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this: never let someone else's definition of success make you feel like a failure. Sometimes the simplest life is the most powerful one of all. 1 year has passed since that explosive morning in my workshop. If you had told me back then that life could feel this peaceful, I wouldn't have believed you. Time has a strange way of filtering out the noise and leaving behind only the grain of the wood, the truth of who we are. My life now is a stark contrast to the chaos of the bankruptcy and the betrayal. The workshop, once a place of quiet refuge, has evolved into something much grander. It is now the primary research and development center for Timberforge innovations. We've added a glass-walled wing that looks out over the oak forest, where bioengineers in white coats work side by side with master carpenters covered in sawdust. It's a beautiful marriage of the old world and the new. But I made sure of one thing. My original workbench, the one where I stood my ground against my family, stays exactly where it was. It reminds me every day of the cost of integrity. Lydia is no longer just the country girl in the eyes of the world. She's been featured on the covers of major business magazines, hailed as the woman who saved the construction industry from its own carbon footprint. But when she comes home, she's still the same woman who finds joy in the smell of rain on dry earth. We've used the success of the company to establish a local foundation that teaches traditional woodworking and sustainable farming to at-risk youth. We want to show them that there's a path to a high-status career that doesn't involve a desk in a skyscraper or stepping on others to get ahead. As for the golden boy, Nathan's fall was long and hard. He didn't just lose his money. He lost his identity. For a man who defined himself entirely by the car he drove and the size of his bonus, being a junior clerk at a small insurance firm was a fate worse than prison. I heard through Emily that for the first few months, he was in a state of total shock. He had to learn how to do things he'd always paid others for: laundry, cooking, even grocery shopping on a strict budget. Lydia's legal team made sure the repayment plan was ironclad. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, a significant portion of his meager paycheck is diverted into the trust fund we set up for our parents. It's not enough to give them back their luxury lifestyle, but it provides them with a dignified life. It's poetic justice, really. The son they pampered and prioritized is now the one physically laboring to keep them afloat. Vanessa, true to her nature, vanished the moment the money did. She filed for divorce in a flurry of bitter social media posts, trying to paint herself as a victim of Nathan's financial instability. She tried to claim alimony, but since Nathan has a court-ordered debt to his parents that takes legal precedence, she walked away with a few pieces of jewelry the bank overlooked. I heard she moved back in with her parents in the city and is desperately trying to find a new investor to fund her lifestyle. I don't hold any malice toward her. She was just a symptom of a much larger disease. My relationship with my parents is complicated. For months, I didn't take their calls. Couldn't. Every time I saw Dad pop up on my phone, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. The feeling of being 12 years old and being told I wasn't smart enough, or 25 and being told I was wasting my life. But Lydia, in her infinite wisdom, reminded me that carrying a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I finally agreed to see them last Thanksgiving. Not at their old house, which is now owned by a tech executive, and not at my workshop. We met at a small, neutral park. My father looked smaller. The arrogance that used to radiate from him like heat had been replaced by a quiet, subdued energy. He didn't mention money once. He didn't ask for a loan. Instead, he spent 30 minutes talking to me about the tomatoes he's trying to grow on his small apartment balcony. He handed me a small box. Inside was a set of vintage chisels, the ones that belonged to his father, my grandfather. He'd kept them in storage for decades. "I should have given these to you years ago, Joshua," he said, his voice cracking. "I thought your brother was the one who would carry on the family legacy because he understood the numbers. I was wrong. You're the only one who actually understands the value of building something that lasts." That was the closest I'll ever get to a full apology, and honestly, it was enough. We aren't a close-knit family, and we probably never will be. The scars are too deep for that. But we've reached a state of peaceful coexistence. I pay for their health insurance and their rent not because I have to, but because I'm a better man than they raised me to be. I don't do it for their approval anymore. I do it for my own peace of mind. Emily has been the bridge between our worlds. She's thrived in her role at Timberforge. She's the one who organizes the family dinners and keeps the peace. She recently told me that Nathan asked if he could come by the shop one day, not to talk about money, but just to see what I've built. I told her I'm not ready for that yet. Maybe in 5 years. Maybe in 10. Trust is easy to break but incredibly slow to grow back. Much like a redwood tree. One of the most satisfying moments of the past year was when Julian Croft, the CEO of the company, arrived at the shop in a Rolls-Royce for our quarterly board meeting. My father happened to be there, dropping off some of those balcony tomatoes. He watched as this billionaire, a man he had idolized from afar for years, walked past him and gave me a firm, respectful handshake, treating me as an absolute equal. The look on my father's face wasn't one of jealousy. It was a look of profound realization. He finally saw that the ambition he thought I lacked had actually led me to a height Nathan could never reach. Lydia and I are expecting our first child in a few months, a son. We've already started talking about how we'll raise him. He'll know the value of $1, but more importantly, he'll know the value of his word. He'll learn to work with his hands and his head. He won't be a golden boy or an other son. He'll just be himself, and he'll know that his parents love him for exactly who he is, regardless of whether he chooses to build empires or birdhouses. As the sun sets over the property now, I often walk out to that old oak tree where Lydia and I said our vows. The land is thriving. The company is booming. But the greatest success isn't the bank account or the patents. It's the fact that I can look in the mirror and know that I never sacrificed my soul for a promotion or a paycheck. I stood by the woman I loved when everyone else mocked her, and she stood by me when everyone else dismissed me. We didn't just survive the storm. We used the wind to power our growth. If you're still here with me, listening to this journey, I want to share one final thought. People often ask me if I regret being so harsh with my family at the end. They ask if I should have been the bigger person and just handed over the money to save my brother. My answer is always the same. Being the bigger person doesn't mean allowing yourself to be a doormat for people who don't respect you. Forgiveness is a choice, but boundaries are a necessity. If I had signed those papers, I wouldn't have been saving the family. I would have been enabling a thief and rewarding a bully. I would have been telling Lydia that her hard work and her brilliance were less important than Nathan's ego. Real family isn't just about whose blood runs through your veins. It's about who stands beside you when the world feels like it's falling apart. It's about the people who see your value when you're covered in dust and sweat, not just when you're holding a trophy. Nathan's life collapsed because it was built on a foundation of sand, on lies, on debt, and on the desperate need to look better than everyone else. My life held together because it was built on solid oak, on labor, on love, and on a partnership with a woman who was far more than she appeared to be. The most powerful moment of this entire year didn't happen in a courtroom or a boardroom. It happened last Tuesday, in the quiet of the morning. I was in the shop working on a crib for our son. Lydia came in, her face glowing with that late pregnancy radiance, and she just watched me work for a while. She didn't say anything about the company or the millions of dollars in the bank. She just ran her hand over the smooth wood of the crib and said, "It's perfect, Joshua. It's strong, it's honest, and it's going to last for generations." That's the legacy I care about, not a name on a building or a mention in a financial journal. I want to be remembered as a man who built things that lasted. I want to be known as the man who saw the beauty in a country girl and had the courage to protect the life they created together. To those of you who have ever felt like the black sheep, or the one who was too simple for the rest of the family, stay the course. Don't let their noise drown out your inner compass. Your value isn't determined by their inability to see it. Keep building, keep planting, keep being true to who you are. Because one day, the storm will come for them too, and they'll realize that the only things that survive are the ones built with integrity. I look out at the workshop now and I see the future. It's a future where we don't have to choose between progress and nature, between success and soul. It's a future that started with a simple wife and a bitter brother, and a choice to say no to a lie so I could say yes to the truth. Nathan still calls me sometimes, usually on holidays. His voice is different now, hesitant, almost shy. He's starting to ask questions about the workshop. Not about the money, but about the craft. He asked me the other day what kind of wood is best for a beginner to practice on. I told him to start with pine. It's soft, it's forgiving, and it's a good place to learn how to fix your mistakes. Maybe one day he'll be ready for the oak. But for now, he's learning to be honest with the wood. And that's a start. My parents are coming over for dinner next Sunday. Lydia is making her famous apple pie. There won't be any talk